we just got a puppy. So if you see somebody jump up here or make noise behind me, I apologize. There's no controlling a puppy. Um, so my name is Shannon Efteland, and I am with the ARC of Tennessee with our Family Engagement Project. We are funded by a grant from the state of Tennessee Department of Education. And we give training for parents. We are also individual caseworkers with parents, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what we do. I am a college professor, and I'm a parent mentor and a trainer for the ARC. And I have 3 children that are in Knox County schools, 2 of whom receive special education services. So I've been on many different sides of this. So we're going to go over just talking about some of the basics of special education and delve into where you can have the most input and why your input matters. And then we'll talk about your rights and we'll talk about the IEP process. So we are funded as part of the state's Tennessee Technical Assistance Network, or TINTAN, and these are the areas of support that they offer. They have a website you can go to and search for resources from all of these organizations. Intensive behavior and autism supports are provided by Triad at Vanderbilt University. Preschool services provided by ANLAR. The Tennessee Tiered Support Center provides supports for districts going through those different RTI 1 and 2. Those are the different tiered levels of support that you may hear that your child has. We are really lucky here because we have the Assistive Technology Project is just in Loudoun, and they are a great organization. They can help families learn what might be possible in assistive technology for their child, and they can help school districts with a lending library, and they go through all the apps and vet apps and things like that that students can use for different accessibility needs. If you have a child going through transition or approaching that age 14 and up, where they're going through that post-secondary transition, Transition Tennessee offers some resources. And we're at the bottom there, family engagement. We also have a transition specialist to help families through it. And the Family Engagement Project is to really bridge that gap in communication between schools and families. We try to make sure that families have all the tools that you need to understand the process, so you know how to ask for what your student needs in the right language to get it, and that you know how to read your students' documents. We all know that that's a daunting process, right? You're handed these huge documents and you kind of go, what do I do with it? And that's what we're here to help. Right, so the 1010 network, you could go and do a referral for yourself to get my assistance or someone else across the state's assistance, or districts and schools can go in and request help for any of these services. So what we do is empower parents and caregivers to increase their participation in special education. We provide resources and training, and we assist families in really navigating the process on their own. And we are, as a group, educators, parents, mental health professionals. We have an ed psych on our team. We have a former counselor on our team. We have special education teachers, and almost all of us are either parents or grandparents to students with special needs. And we do a lot of work together. So we often meet and talk about cases to make sure that we're getting everybody the right thing that you need. We have regional specialists across the state. This is our state coverage. You can see that each of the 8 smaller districts is covered. This is my region and my contact information, so you can see all the counties that I serve. You are welcome to email me, even if you might be from a surrounding county that I don't serve. You're welcome to email me, and we, like I said, we work really well together as a team, and we can connect you to the right person. All right, so in our training today, it's pretty condensed training. I'm going to expand a little bit, but it's really designed to give you an overview of what support is available through our project and why your input in your child's education matters. So we're going to talk about how parent involvement impacts student outcomes, and this really cannot be overstated. It's a dramatic impact. The more involved you are in your child's education, the better their long-term outcomes are. We will review your rights under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, also called IDEA, and we'll understand the basics of an IEP, that individualized education program, and we'll go through that initial process for eligibility. Right, so why does family engagement matter? Well, there was a beginning of some research in 2002 that showed that there is a positive relationship between family involvement and student success. But what's really been important in the body of research that's come out since is that it has shown that regardless of any additional factors, socioeconomic factors, race, ethnicity, parents' former education levels, all of that, that parent involvement is one of the number one indicators for student success long term. Now, when you look at how much more important that is for our students who have disabilities, it becomes even more magnified. The more involved families are, the more involved caregivers are in their students' education, the greater the long-term success of that student. They maximize independence, they maximize academic ability, and they maximize social well-being. So it really is a huge, important part of your child's success. And I know as a parent, I know sometimes you often feel like you are failing at all of it, right? Like you're not getting anywhere, or you're fighting to get all of these different things for your child, and you're not sure that any of it is making a difference. And I can tell you without a doubt that it does make a difference. And sometimes you don't see that difference, like with all children. You may not see that difference for a long period of time, but it does make a difference long term for you to be an active and involved part of their process. And when we're talking about students with disabilities, it's really important to note that their IEP teams may come and go, right? The people that serve on their team at school may come and go, but you are the consistent and you are the expert in their child. So you have a very, very important role to play in all of this. All right, so the National PTA Association, the Parent Teacher Association, has national standards for family and school partnerships. Now, keep in mind that these are listed for students without disabilities in mind, just for general education students, but also with the idea that all students are general education students first. So one of the first findings that they came up with in developing their national standards were that involvement programs that are linked to learning improve student achievement. So these are things like family math nights, family literacy nights, family teacher conferences. Sometimes they have family workshops for planning to go to college. All of these kinds of things really do improve student success. So I know that Knox County Schools is pretty good about having those events, that most of our schools have these kinds of events. And where this is important for us is as a caregiver of a student with disability, you may have to reach out to your school and tell them what you need to participate in those events. You may need to call them and say, hey, we need access to a quiet room, or we need the materials in large print, right? Or maybe someone in the family needs a sign language interpreter at the event. You may have to call your school and ask them, but being able to participate in those events can be really, really important. They also found that speaking up for children protects and promotes their success. I think we all, as because you're here, right? You're here working towards the success of your child with a disability. You understand that. So speaking up not only works for our children, right? We're not only speaking up for our children, but if you call and ask for accessibility, or you call and speak to somebody about an issue that you have at school, chances are you're not the only student that's having that issue, right? And so you're speaking up for other students as well. All students can contribute to their children's success. Now, this is where we come in, because there can often be a gap between how you know to participate and what you actually can do to participate. So there may be lots of things that you're not aware of that you can participate in your child's success, and we can help you figure that out. And then we see that community organizing gets results. Now, this one's a little bit tricky when we talk about that for students with disabilities. It's more important when you start looking at transition activities. You start looking at community-based learning and work-based learning. So if you have a business, or you know people who have a business or a company, you can go in and talk to them about partnering with your local middle school or high school to allow the students with disabilities to come into their facility and either work or participate in some sort of event in their business, or to even go there as a sort of shopping experience, right? Or to see what people do, to shadow someone in their job. These are all things that the whole community needs to organize around to provide those opportunities for our children. All right, so again, opportunities for you to engage. Um, Joining the Parent Advisory Council, right? That's what we're here for. Sue does a great job of creating this Knox County Schools Parent Advisory Council. You might be asked to participate on that. Participating in your PTA. Again, if PTA is hosting an event, you can be the voice there to make sure that it's an accessible event, making sure that students with disabilities are remembered in the planning for that event. Communicating the positive. This is a two-way street. Like we all know when you are communicating with your teachers, there's a lot of times where we communicate over and over and over again about somebody's bad behavior or somebody wasn't paying attention or the teacher was using the wrong language with a child, something like that. These things happen. But we often forget that we also need to call that teacher when they have a wonderful project for our child. One example that I've used is that my son has Down syndrome and he's in middle school and he is in a general education classroom with modified work. And sometimes that is difficult to do. Modifying that work for him can be really tricky. And one of his social studies teachers, they were looking at the Silk Road, and his social studies teacher made a whole map sort of diorama for him. And he built it out of Legos, and they had little paper people that were wearing the clothing of the right people and, looked like those ethnicities of the people along the road. They had some pieces of fabric and bags of tea and bags of sugar, and he put those all along the pathway. They even looked at different kinds of trees that grew in different areas and had little pictures of trees and animals that grew in that geography. And it was a project that took about 2.5 weeks for him to do in class while everyone else was working on more academic related content. He was able to work on that, and it really made an impact on him. He was very proud of it. And I was absolutely called that teacher and said, "This was really wonderful. Thank you for the thought and the time that it put into this." And so recognizing that, right? We would love to get calls from teachers where they say, "Oh my gosh, your child did a great job today." Right? They really paid attention, they focused really well, or they just had a lot of fun and it was good to see. So these are some really important things. We know our teachers work hard and we work hard as parents. So excuse me. So it can be really important to communicate the positive. One of the things on here that I know can be really big for our area is sporting events. And it can be difficult for us to attend sporting events with our children. We had a student that was at Halls High School, and he had part of his disability was that he got overheated very easily, and it was dangerous for him and difficult for him to cool down. So the parents approached the high school and asked if they could put a tent up on the green beside the stands and put one of those big fans that they use in the gym, and have some water. They could bring their water in a cooler and let him sit in there with the fan. And the school did that, and he was able to go to every football game and he had a blast. But without them asking and without the school making that accommodation, he would probably not have been able to participate at that event. So we have to speak up and ask for these things. So this is where our family engagement team can help. We can help you with resources and information. We can help you with some wording for how to ask for those things, and to let you know really where can you get in, where can you have your input. All right, so for this very first part of the presentation, I'm going to go ahead and stop and see if anybody has any questions or comments. I can't see the chat, so Sue, you'll have to let me know if there's anything on there. I can do that. If anybody has a question, you're welcome to unmute and ask it now, and then we'll move on to the next part. Nothing? Okay. So we're going to talk about the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. This is the federal special education law that outlines what our students are supposed to be receiving in school. So these are just a couple of the things that are in there. These are some terms and acronyms. It's obviously a very long and involved law. There are places you can go online to look at it. There's a really good resource called Rights Law. That's with a W. Rights Law website has some really great resources that explain all the different parts of IDEA to you. But we know special education loves their acronyms, right? Everything's in acronyms. And you go to these meetings and you're kind of like, I have no idea what anybody said. It was all a bunch of letter soup. So some of the things that you will see are the prior written notice, and that's PWN. That's a document that you should get after every IEP meeting. The IEP itself stands for Individualized Education Program. And we talk about the LRE, that's their least restrictive environment. And that's an important thing to understand. Again, Wright's Law has some good information about that. But least restrictive environment means that essentially all students are gen ed students first, and that they should be in the place where they are the least restricted away from their typical peers and the experiences of their typical peers. All right, so part of the procedural safeguards within IDEA are your parental rights. And some of the things that they allow you are that parents have the right to participate in all IEP meetings, right? And I would encourage you to participate in all IEP meetings. And I can help you prepare your own thoughts and your goals for your child and make sure that you have everything down in the right language. That's a big part of what we do, because sometimes you don't really know what's the most important things and how to whittle it down and how to write it in the right language. Again, as I stated earlier, the IEP teams can change from year to year, but you are the consistent in your child's life. And all team members should stay up to date on the student services and supports. And I want to encourage you as a parent to kind of think about what questions you want to ask. I have a list of questions that I ask my students team periodically every 3 or 4 months. I say, hey, how is this working? We need to check in and just get some input on some specific things about his plan and his performance and any issues that they might see arising. And then it's important to note that your input can help shape the IEP, and it should. Your input should be a part of the IEP process. One of the examples is, again, I have a 14-year-old, and you would not think of this if you just saw a typical seventh grade boy, but he loves Barbies, and he will do just about anything for a Barbie. And so if you are trying to get him to work on something, you can say, hey, I have the box over here that has a couple of Barbies in it, and you can play with them if you finish this work before the timer goes off, right? And then he's like, well, okay. And he'll do the work more than likely because he wants 10 minutes to play with the Barbies. But you wouldn't know that, right? Nobody would really necessarily think of that unless I told them that as part of the IEP team. But it helps his team out. It helps them work with him better. And so these things are really important. You know your child best, and sharing that knowledge really helps to shape their education and get them the best outcomes. So again, you have the right to participate in defining your child's education. You have the right to prior consent. So you should be asked for your signed consent before evaluations. You are informed of and consent to IEP meetings. There are specific timelines that are your rights, and you can look online, special education timelines in Tennessee. You can email me. I'm happy to send you that link, and it lays out if you request an IEP meeting, when are you supposed to have it? If an evaluation is being done, when are you supposed to have it? And so all of these things are set in these pre-prescribed legal timelines. You have the right to be informed of any proposed changes and actions that are going to happen. You have the right to confidentiality, so they're not sharing your child's records with anyone, right? They have a certain, if people aren't educationally relevant to need that, then they don't need it. You have the right to review your child's education record. You can go into your school or call the district and say, I would like to see my child's file. You have the right to change anything in the file to say this wasn't right or we need copies of this extra thing. So all of these are within your rights. And then you do have the right to disagree with any results or plans, to appeal them. And there are formal processes for doing that if you don't get the resolution that you want. All right, any questions about that part? Any questions about your rights and responsibilities?
I'm not sure that you could have turned off your microphone or turned on your microphones last time, but they should all be on now. So if you do want to comment, you're welcome to do that either through your microphone or you can do it in the chat box.
Okay, well, I will move on. If you think of anything else that you want to ask, feel free to jump in. So we're going to go through the next few slides are just going to be an overview of the IEP process. We will talk about determining eligibility, what happens with that first meeting. And this is really meant to be just a kind of visual snapshot of something that can be a very complex process. But what's really important about it is to know that it is a prescribed process. And as long as you understand the basics of how the process should go, it allows you to kind of figure out where and how you can participate the most each step along the way. Okay, so the process starts with a referral, and a lot of you may already be past that process, right? You may be like me and you're years into your special education journey. For those who are not, it starts with a referral, and you determine if an evaluation is needed. The parent has to consent for that proposed evaluation. And then the important part here, and this is for an evaluation for any student, that the evaluation should be conducted in all areas of suspected disability. So if you think a student has a reading disability or a learning disability in reading, then you're not going to just look at that, because you also want to look at their processing speed. You also want to look at their working memory. You also want to look at their organization and their executive function, because a lot of that can play into reading, right? So they're not just going to say, oh, we're going to do a reading benchmark test and we're going to look at it. They're going to do a whole series of evaluations. And then again, prescribed timeline. That IEP team is going to meet before 60 calendar days to review the testing and determine if that student is eligible for special education. And that eligibility is very prescribed. There are 16 categories of eligibility in Tennessee, and they have these specific terms for them and specific ways that a student might meet that. One of the comments that I get a lot, or one of the situations I get a lot, is that a student has a diagnosis, but a school team may say that's not educationally relevant. And this is a really important nuance, that sometimes a student has a disability or has an impact in their lives that doesn't necessarily apply for what's educational, for what they need at school, for assistance and services and support they need at school, right? Maybe they need those outside of school. Maybe this will be lifelong training that they will need or support that they would need, but it may not impact them enough in school for them to require special education services. So if you are someone you know are in that process, I'm happy to talk with you about that nuance and what other services and supports might be available through a school if it's determined that someone is not eligible and the parent thinks they should be. All right, so the initial IEP process, again, this is Individualized Education Program. That's that big document that you get. They schedule a meeting if eligibility is determined. Then all the members of the IEP team will gather in person or virtually, and there are prescribed people that are supposed to be at that meeting. It includes a representative from your school, usually an administrator, who can really talk to the financing needs of what they have. You have a general education teacher, a special education teacher who may or may not also be the special education caseworker for that student. And then you have anybody else there who's going to talk about that student's evaluations. So if you had an occupational therapy evaluation or an assistive technology consult, the people who can explain those results should also be in the meeting. And then anyone else that they feel like knows the child. And again, going back to your parent rights, it's your right to bring someone with you to the meeting, someone who can support you or who has some relevant information about that child. I've taken my child's counselor before to school to discuss what he really needs and how his educational plan affects his well-being. These are always great conversations to have. And then at the end of it, the team members will sign that they participated in developing the IEP, and it's a separate place to sign that you approve of the document. So if the parents agree with the IEP, you can provide consent for it to be implemented. And this next part is really important, and it's often a step that we overlook. The school provides the parents with a document called a prior written notice, or PWN, that explains all the actions. It's usually 2 pages. It goes through everything that was proposed at the meeting, why it was accepted or rejected, and what steps are going to be taken. And then the parent can review that document, you have the right to request edits for that document. Sometimes you may say, oh, that's not exactly what I asked or not exactly how I understood that. Or maybe I mentioned something that we want to do later and I would like that in the prior written notice so I can make sure we have that paper trail and that documented. And then you agree to the prior written notice before the IEP is implemented. And usually you receive that a couple of days after the IEP meeting. If you don't have those documents, you can always go back to your school team and say, hey, we had an IEP meeting 2 months ago, and I don't remember what was on that prior written notice. Can you send it to me? And most teams are really good about sending it to you right away, and you can review it and look through it. And then you should also receive regular progress reports on your students' performance related to their IEP goals. And I know for Knox County Schools, that comes usually with report cards. You get a progress notice. It's a little different in high school. So if you have a high school student, those don't look the same. But K through 8, you'll get a progress report that should have each of their IEP goals, and it gives you a narrative about how they're doing on that. And again, if you don't have copies of those, email your caseworker or special education teacher and request those documents. All right, so that's just a quick overview about the IEP. Part of what our team can do is actually go through your IEP with you and your prior written notice with you. We can walk you through each section and tell you what it means. I know Sue is able to do that as well, what each section means and how it might apply to your child. And we'll go over your child's goals and progress reports with you as well, and just make sure that everything is lining up for what you want for your child. All right, any questions on that process? Or really any questions at all?
I have a question.
Sure.
I have a daughter who has been at a private school for the last 2 years, and then we are switching her back to public in Knox County
Mm-hmm.
For her 7th grade year, starting this fall. And she will likely need an IEP for ADHD, and she also has Graves' disease, which can affect her. Sorry, my toddler's
It's
taking
okay.
me. And I am kind of wondering when I should start that process, like of trying to figure out.
I would say start
Like,
that process now. Maybe wait till the end of
okay,
this week because they're finishing the
okay,
TN Ready testing. But go ahead
right.
and contact your school. Sue, do you have anything specific for Knox County to share about that?
I agree. I would say if you have any kind of information or if she has any diagnoses and things like that, you can reach out to your home school and let
Okay,
them know. And there's some things that they can do ahead of time.
okay,
So it's kind of, I'm not really sure what you're looking for, but we definitely could help with things like sometimes parents want the kids to actually come and see the school, for example. During the summer
right,
months, we are open on Wednesdays in the morning. So that's something that we can offer to kind of help with that transition. There are
okay,
some activities that go on during this time of year. We're very busy.
hmm
So
right,
those kinds of things can also happen. I always encourage if there's a worry about that transition, going to things like ball games or going to graduation or those kinds of things that kids can kind of see what things are and get familiar with the building. So it's kind of up to you on what you might need, but you certainly could start that process.
Mm-hmm.
okay,
Yeah,
and
and I think they'll need an application packet and all of that kind of stuff, and you
You-
can certainly start getting all that paperwork and that transitioning between the two schools and making sure everybody has the proper documents.
Yes,
Again, I'd say
enrollment.
that I
Yes,
think do it
you
is
could go ahead and enroll your
yeah
child. Yes, and that would be very helpful too.
okay,
is TN Ready testing over this week? I think it's finished Friday for most
There,
schools.
it should be done for most of the schools. There is going to be some makeup dates probably next week, but
Right,
yes,
right.
things would be much more calm probably next week than it is right now.
Yeah, yeah, I would
right,
agree.
right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, well, don't go yet, because I'm funded by a state grant. I need you to finish the survey if you can. So here are some resources. The top one is our website, thefamilyengagementtn.com. There are some resources on there. You can get to our referral link. I think you have my email in the chat. TN Step is a great organization that has all kinds of parent learning modules online. They sometimes do training sessions, but you can access a whole training library online. And then understood.org, this link is to a specific article about parents playing a role in the IEP process. But that whole website, I use understood.org a lot of times for ideas about accommodations for specific students or specific needs. They also have lots of good parent training modules. So if you're someone who likes to kind of jump in the rabbit hole, both of those websites are really good. And then again, our family engagement website has links to events and community things that we do for that. You can connect with the Family Engagement Project in lots of places. We have an East Tennessee specific Facebook page. We have our state Facebook page, and then there's also Instagram and Twitter that are for our state organization. All right, and if you will take the survey, this says at the end DSAG. That's for another organization. I'm not allowed to edit the slide. So just Special Education 101, and you can say Knox County Schools. But this survey link will just help us make sure that I'm actually giving the training to live people, so that we can continue to get our state funding. And if you have any questions, I'm here, and feel free to chime in or put your questions in the chat. And I appreciate your time today.
And yes, please, please do fill out these surveys. I always say with Shannon and with anybody who's doing these things, they are doing these trainings for free. This helps them with their funding. So I'm always a big believer. I know sometimes we get surveyed a lot, but this is something that's really important that will help Shannon to continue to do her mission and to help all of us, not just our families here, but across the state. So please do help her with that. I did put her email in the chat box. Shannon is somebody that I talk to quite frequently, and I encourage families to reach out to her. She has a lot of great knowledge and information. Also, the transition, we actually had the transition group, and I can't think of Penny's last name, but Penny
Johnson.
Johnson, thank you.
Yep.
She did an excellent presentation. She's also very, very knowledgeable and helpful. I also put in the chat box the information about the Parent Empowerment Council. I'm always recruiting people that want to do that. The requirements are you have to be a parent or acting as a parent. You have a little person who has disabilities and is in Knox County School, and you're the big person taking care of them. I will be sending some information out for that as well. I don't see any other questions. I'm going to say, Shannon, if you're okay, just go ahead and open up your mics. And if you have questions, certainly please share that. There is a question asking if they can have the copy of the slides, Shannon.
Yes, I can. Did I send you that so I can send it as a PDF?
I don't think I have that, but yeah,
okay.
If you could send that to me, that'd be awesome.
Yep, I can.
And I have someone saying, thank you, Shannon.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Another thank you. Okay. Well, before we go, I just want to remind you, we do have one more training for this school year, and it is going to be about the Sunshine organization. They're going to do an information session. They're going to talk about it's for kids that are in transition into out of school. They do job placement. They have a variety of different kinds of supports, and they've kind of reinvented themselves. So I think we're all going to learn some new information about them. That is going to be May the 15th, and that's going to be at 12 o'clock. It's going to be a Monday. So that will be our last for this school year. Thank you so much, everybody. I almost forgot. I wanted to introduce Jenny Reed. She's also on here. And Jenny Reed is our early childhood child find person, and she has been fantastic in helping with, she's been with Knox County for a little while, but she's been helping me a whole lot this year, just really helping with the pre-K children and their family. So I want you definitely to see her face because she is a wonderful, wonderful asset as well. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions or concerns, again, hopefully we'll see you next in May on the 15th. Everybody have a wonderful afternoon, and you have a few extra minutes to eat your lunch. So that's always a good bonus.
Thank you.